Our reading today is from 1 Peter 2, verse 1 to 10. Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. As you came to him, the living stone rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For in the scripture it says, "See, I lay a stone in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame." Now, to you who believe, the stone is precious. But to those who do not believe, the stone the builders rejected has become a cornerstone, and a stone that causes people to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the message, which is also what they were destined for. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.
If you've been on your travels recently and maybe visited Europe or taken a day trip into London, you might have probably come across some very impressive church buildings. We've got 3 on the picture here. The one on the left, I'm not letting you guess that one, that's St. Paul's Cathedral. Do any of the kids or younger folk know what the middle one is? I'll give you a clue. There was a Disney film with a bloke who used to ring a bell. Any of the grown-ups know where that one is? No. Notre Dame, that's right, in Paris. And we're getting harder now on the end, the third one. Anywhere, nowhere in Europe, that is. Cologne, very good. I was going to save the sweets for the kids, but I think Joel and Michelle need to see me afterwards as well. That's the River Rhine there. That's Cologne, a very famous Gothic cathedral. And if you do go and visit one of these big church buildings and you get inside, there are sometimes some amazing features to behold, like these on our next picture. There's sort of huge vaulted ceilings giving you this impression that you're connecting with heaven somehow. You've also got lots of stained glass windows which tell stories from the Bible and church history, and lots of other finely designed things, maybe gold and things that are so amazing and stunning and precious that make you think, wow, this is glorious. Maybe you've even seen some of the painstaking work that goes into these places. I think most of the time I visit them, they seem to be scaffolding everywhere and you can't quite see them. But here's one on the next picture that had the builders occupied for the last 140 years or so. This is Gaudi's Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. Now they reckon it will mostly be finished next year. But then they also had a footnote that the decorative bits might take another decade or so. You can't rush these things. Now, if we lose those pictures for a minute, come back with me to Emmanuel Epsom. We are a smallish young church, 10 years old this autumn. We don't have our own building. We meet in a school. We have to put the chairs out each week. We don't have fine gold furniture and a vaulted ceiling. We have music stands and a shed. There's nothing much that we can look around in our worship as we gather and touch and gaze upon and say, wow, isn't this glorious? There's nothing like that here, is there? Or is there? Or is there? Because amazingly, as we'll see in these verses, God is in the business even today of showing his glory to his church as we gather. And he's also at work revealing his glory through his church to the people around us. And it all centers upon Jesus. At various points in life, I think we will all be asking these 2 questions that we're going to think about today. Who am I and what am I here for? What am I meant to be doing with my life? There's lots of ways you probably are facing those questions and seeking to answer them. But at a very fundamental level, the Bible reveals to us an identity and a purpose of who we are as Christians, as church. A way of relating to God and to the world around us that truly makes sense, that truly satisfies, that gives us true purpose, even in the face of struggle and brokenness and suffering. Christians together have a glorious identity and a glorious purpose. Let's look at those two things in turn. So firstly, a glorious identity. Now this identity that the church has is it's like a diamond, really. If you were to hold up a diamond and you were to turn it round in your hand, it would reflect the light in all sorts of angles. It'd be very rich and beautiful and wonderful. Church has such a glorious identity. Even in our short reading today, 10 verses, we're told so much about who we are. So first bit of our identity on the next picture. We are living stones being built into a spiritual house. Look at verse 5 with me. You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house. Now notice the word also there. That's an important word. This living stone identity, it's not one that we've dreamt up ourselves. It's not one we've given ourselves as church. We haven't got together one day and thought, oh, church, it's a bit like living stones. That's a nice picture, isn't it? Maybe we should call ourselves that. No, we don't get that ourselves. This identity has been given to us. It's only ours because of the one true living stone in verse 4 there. It's as we come to him, this is speaking of Jesus, as we come to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house. Living stones is a funny picture. It's a funny way of talking about Christians. It's perhaps even a more strange way of talking about Jesus himself. But it's a picture that is worth staying with for a moment. It becomes clearer, it becomes more glorious as we reflect on the backstory to this idea of being living stones. Because if we flick back in our Bibles, not that I'm saying flick now, but if we were to, a key part of the big Bible story is how God relates to his people. So in the Old Testament, to the nation of Israel, we can read in our Old Testament about how Israel were to approach God in worship. How and where and when he would meet with them, how he would dwell among them and show something of his glory to his people and through his people. And at the heart of that relationship was a house, the house of God, the temple. The temple was the center of a sacrifice for sin, for offerings, for praises. It was a sign that God was with his people. And so if you read around the times of Chronicles like we did earlier, and you read of King Solomon, and in his day the temple that they built, it was constructed with the finest materials known at the time. It was overlaid in gold. It was glorious. But the glory of that building was actually pointing forward to something even more wonderful, even more glorious. So hundreds of years later, enter Jesus, the Son of God, the living Word of God. In his life, death, resurrection, he came to fulfill and transform the way any of us can relate to God, how any of us can know God and have a relationship with him. There's a reading we often read at Christmas time in our carol services in John's Gospel that we're told Jesus, the Word of God, he became flesh and he made his dwelling among us. And John writes, we have seen his glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So Jesus is the living stone. He's the true and greater temple of God. He is the place where God and humanity meet. He is the living stone. And God has set his stone in place, this cornerstone, through raising Jesus from the dead. He's the living stone. He's the first, the last, the living one. There is nobody today more alive than Jesus Christ. He is the living stone. And now that he has risen and ascended to heaven and poured out his Spirit on all people, now the dwelling place of God is actually among his people, even us today. We too are now living stones. Jesus promises to be in our midst. He promises that the Godhead will dwell with his people by his Spirit and be with us always. It's in him, in Jesus Christ, that we find this glorious identity. It's in him we discover the joy of belonging to one another, sharing life together. We together are living stones being built together on Jesus, the living stone. We are being built into a spiritual house. Notice that word, secondly, that this house is spiritual. We get that word there. Did you spot it? Twice in quick succession. Verse 5, we're being built into a spiritual house to offer spiritual sacrifices. We'll think in a moment what those sacrifices are. But notice this is a spiritual house. So today we relate to God, we worship him in spirit and in truth. See, our relationship with God, in contrast to the Old Testament, is no longer about belonging to a particular nation or tribe. It's no longer about going to a particular physical place, as impressive as those cathedrals are around the world. It's no longer about outward offerings and sacrifices, because those never had the power to take away our greatest need, which is our sin and our rejection of God. But Christ came and he offered himself once for all as a sacrifice for sin. He rose, he ascended. And he has poured out his Spirit on all people, young and old, men, women, every nation, we're told in the book of Acts. And so that means that you, me, and all of us, and folks around us, can come to God through faith in Jesus, can know complete cleansing and forgiveness and a new life because of Jesus' once for all spiritual sacrifice that dealt with the problem of our hearts and gives us new life by his Spirit. The breadth of the gospel, the way it's open to everybody, comes because of its depth, the way it deals deeply with our hearts. It's an identity that changes hearts from the inside out. We are living stones being built into a spiritual house. And so if this is what God is doing, if this is what he's up to, building his spiritual house with us as living stones, let me ask you, how are you doing in that building project? Are you experiencing some of that being built together in this way, being built up as part of this church community? I think this reminds us at least that we need one another in order to grow as Christians. We need one another in order to appreciate fully what God is doing in our lives and what God is saying to us in our word, in his word. We need each other to be strengthened in God's grace to us. You know, there's things about your life and your spiritual journey, if I think about you as an individual, that maybe I will never know because I don't know you as well as some others do. But perhaps the person sitting next to you or the person in your life group may be really good at drawing that aspect of you out and being used by God to build you up and to build the rest of us up as we share in that. We need one another. We are living stones being built into a spiritual house. As we begin to start a new term soon, maybe this could be a time for you to more fully appreciate this spiritual house that God is building. Maybe for you that could mean committing to being here more regularly on a Sunday, or to join a life group, or to meet with another Christian a few times a month, to open God's word and to strengthen one another in the grace of God. Do chat to me or one of the elders if you're interested in those things. We are being built into a spiritual house. And now, Next slide. As I said, there's lots this morning. It's a diamond. There's a rich, multifaceted identity that we have. And we get some more sparkly aspects of this given to us in verses 9 and 10. We could spend all day gazing at this diamond and twirling it around and seeing how it catches the light. But briefly, let's think about some of these things now. Now, why have I put all these words into this nice book on the screen here? It's to remind us again that they all have a Bible backstory to them. Verse 9, you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. Each of these titles were originally given to the people of Israel in the Old Testament. Just as an example, let me read you a bit from Exodus chapter 19. This happens when God's people have been rescued from Egypt. They're at Mount Sinai, and God is talking to Moses. And he says, you yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. It's all there, isn't it? Chosen people, royal priesthood, holy nation, God's special possession. And Peter's saying that's who we are in Jesus. And the best bit is there's no longer that word if in the sentence. If you obey me fully and keep my covenant. Israel couldn't do that. They failed. We can't do that, any of us. But Jesus can, and he did. And in God's great mercy, he offers us new life in Jesus, so that in him we too might own this identity that is never taken away from us. We have the knowledge that we have been chosen by God. We are being made holy. We are a kingdom of priests. We have the privileges that only priests had in those days of being able to access God ourselves, to speak with him, to commune with him, to relate to him. We're set apart in Jesus as holy and enabled to be holy by his Spirit. We are God's special possession. And all that is to say, as it says on our next slide and in verse 10, that we, church, are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. We today are the people of God. If you're a Christian today, do you ever feel a bit of an imposter when you come to church? Maybe you struggle to believe that you really belong here for whatever reason. Maybe you don't have a particular background in Christian things. It's all a bit strange to you. Maybe it's for cultural reasons that you feel a bit in a minority for some things. Maybe you're not so confident in reading and understanding the Bible as other people seem to be. But belonging to the people of God does not depend on any of those things. The question is, have you trusted in Jesus? Have you received God's mercy? If you have, then you belong. You are one with Christ. You are a vital part of this spiritual house that God is building. You are part of the people of God. Maybe you're wondering yourself whether you want to take that step in following Jesus and to join his people. How do we do that? How does anybody do that? And how can we keep doing that as Christians day by day? Remember I said at the start, it all centers on Jesus. Let me show you how. So in the middle of our passage, there's a section that we sort of danced around a bit, verses 6, 7, and 8. There's 3 quotes from the Old Testament, all applied to Jesus. The first one, verse 6 from Isaiah, that establishes Jesus as the cornerstone. That's saying Jesus is God's cornerstone. Second one, verse 7 from the Psalms, we read that this stone, Jesus, was to be rejected by men, but through this rejection, he would become that cornerstone for his people. Those who don't trust in him, it's a bit like a stone that they trip over and they suffer from because they are rejecting him. But here's how you can trust in him and continue to do so. Look at all the words of invitation in our passage. So verse 4 says, as you come to him, come to Jesus. That first quote there in verse 6 says, the one who trusts in him. Verse 7, to you who believe. As we look around our world, everyone is building their lives on something or someone. We're all builders, like the builders in verse 7. And we're all doing it so that when life gets tricky and bad things happen and suffering comes, that we can each say, it's okay, I've got this. I've got this foundation, I've got this identity, I've got these possessions, I've got these relationships. Whatever it is in your life, that's like your cornerstone. You're building your life on it. But coming to Jesus means, first of all, admitting that you're already building your life on something. But actually, it's not secure. It could be gone tomorrow. And you need to come and build your life on Jesus. And that means seeing, as these verses encourage us to do, that Jesus, verse 6 and 7 there, both say that this stone is precious. That's what you've got to do, is stop building your life on other things and see Jesus as precious. That's not just having some thoughts about him in your head, believing facts about Jesus. Yeah, it's a great place to start, but it also means to treasure Jesus above all things, so that who he is, what he has done for you, is worth more to you than anything. So that when life does get hard and suffering does come, and you can say, well, yes, this and that and anything else that I used to look to for my security, they can go because Jesus is precious to me. He is my cornerstone. He will keep me. Why not take your next step with Jesus today and investigate more about how he can be the foundation that will never fail you? For those of us who do build our lives on Jesus, let's keep doing that. Let's keep considering him as precious. We are accepted in him. He is our foundation. And also, the cornerstone was important because it sets not just the foundation, but it sets the angles for the whole building, doesn't it? If you think about a building project. So maybe if we've got decisions to make in life this year, maybe if we're thinking through, how can I play my part in building this spiritual house? Let's make sure we build on Jesus in those decisions. Let's make sure we line up with him and his word in what he's calling us to do. We have such a glorious identity in him, which leads us on to our glorious purpose. You'll be pleased to know that we have covered most of this already, but a few brief things to add or to bring into focus. We have a glorious identity and secondly, a glorious purpose. Three things. Verse 5, the one that we've covered already. You are being built into a spiritual house. So our purpose is to, sounds a bit passive, be built, but it also implies that we are joining in that building project as well. We are living stones. Every stone, every brick, every person is a precious and vital part of that. So let us keep building one another up. And as we do that, if we think about the glory of those buildings we had on screen at the start, let's keep our spiritual eyes open to spot the true glory around us. Let's praise and thank God when we see it. Even on a quiet, slumbery August morning in Epsom, or maybe through the dark and cold winter nights to come, as we keep gathering as church, as we keep committing to one another, seeking God in his word, building one another up, spurring one another on, we will, if we've got eyes to see them, we will see glorious things. We will see God's glory in the lives of people. Perhaps people who trust Jesus for the first time. We'll see the glory of God's mercy to them. We'll see God's glory in the lives of our brothers and sisters who endure great suffering and maybe even face death itself with their hearts treasuring Jesus above all things. We see God's glory as he changes each of us by his Spirit to be more and more like Jesus. So let's spot those things. Let's talk about them. Let's give God the glory. He is building this spiritual house. Our purpose is to be built, to share in that building, to look for glory. Secondly, our purpose is also to offer spiritual sacrifices, as we read there in verse 5. Remember in the Old Testament, the priests, it was their job, they offered the sacrifices. Now, if we're all a kingdom of priests, well, what sacrifices do we offer? We don't offer anything to pay for our sin. That's Jesus. He's done that. That was once for all. But we are now offering spiritual sacrifices. Remember, spiritual begins on the inside and flows outwards. If you've got time in your week, and you can either sort of read through the whole New Testament if you've got lots of time, or use something fancy like Google to search up words. Look for the ways we're encouraged to sacrifice in the New Testament. So different things come up as we do that. We're called in Romans 12 to offer ourselves, our bodies, our whole being as living sacrifices in response to God's mercy. Giving gifts to others to enable the spread of the gospel and to serve the church is called a sacrifice in Philippians, a fragrant offering. The singing of praise in the book of Hebrews is called a sacrifice. We bring the sacrifice of praise to God's house. What are we sacrificing at that point? Well, in our hearts we're saying, I am not trusting in something else. I'm not giving glory to that thing or that foundation in my life. But whatever it costs, I am praising God. I am glorying in Jesus. These things, in fact, all of life lived for Jesus, can be seen as sacrifice. And lastly, declaring God's praises, verse 9. He has called us out of darkness into his wonderful light, and so we declare his praises. We tell in our words, in our songs, in our conversation, not just on a Sunday, but as we have opportunity during the week, maybe in our own time with the Lord, maybe in our family life, maybe even before the world, when they say to us, as 1 Peter 3 says, what's your hope all about? We can declare the praises of God, the excellencies, the great things about God and his character, things that are worthy of God, our praise. We speak out who God is and what he has done. We declare his glory. This spiritual building project is worth investing in. It really is. So will we find Jesus precious today? Will you find your glorious identity in him? Will you join in this task we've been given to be built and build this spiritual house? Think about Gaudi again and his architects and the builders. 140 years they've been working on that. That's some commitment, isn't it, of your skill, your time, your vocation, in services of an impressive building, but not as impressive or as enduring as the building God is building. Because he is building a glorious temple from his people. And one day the dwelling place of God will be with his people, purely and perfectly. That will never disappear. That will never fade away. And so if they can do that, why can't we, as the people of God, give our lives in joyful service, treasuring Jesus and building one another up?